Speaking of regime change, you often share a stage with Tulsi Gabbard, and though she has been very vocal against regime change wars, she's also stated publicly several times that she does view Islamist terrorism as a major threat to the country and to the world, and she does support targeted drone warfare in an instance like that. And I'm just curious from your perspective, since you two are often very linked together. And I do want to move on in this conversation at some point to talk about the wanting to kind of bring all these third parties together and going into ranked choice voting and the efforts that you guys are doing with that, which I think is really great. But is there a time in your mind when warfare is necessary, or are you blanket anti-war?
We're in the 21st century, at least last I checked. Every nation has a right of self-defense. America has a right of self-defense. Russia has a right of self-defense. China has a right of self-defense. Ukraine has a right of self-defense. Every nation has a right to self-defense. War should not be inevitable. Currently, we have an administration that does not believe in diplomacy and has actually subverted any efforts at reaching a negotiated settlement in Ukraine, to the detriment of the Ukrainian people, I might add. No, I'm not for war. I think war is a racket. I think war is the antithesis of what we're on this planet for. And if we have evolved as a species, the higher cortical functions should inform us that there's ways of settling our differences without killing each other. To talk about neurophysiology here, we know that the lower limbic system, fear, flight, fright, all those things get excited in this country lately. That's not, if our destiny is there, then, we're going to be devolving, moving back towards a earlier definition of the species. But that's not who we are as people. We're evolving, hopefully, upward, and war doesn't match that. And in addition to that, I can make the philosophical argument against war, but the economic argument is there too. War ruins an economy. It's capital intensive, and what you do is you just waste a lot of money, but somebody's making money. You look at the profit sheets of all the major arms manufacturers, they're making money. I mean, war's a racket. I'm not the first one to say that. Smedley Butler, famous soldier, once made that very clear. War is a racket, and we're locked in it. And it's part of what Barbara Tuchman calls a march of folly, where nations can be convinced for a time, go into war, wave the flags, beat the chest, come up with themes of national glory. It's all a lie. We have to find ways in this day and age of settling our differences without killing each other. And the lack of talent in diplomacy is concerning, and it can become catastrophic for our nation, as we have seen, if you reflect upon the deep meaning of the recent reporting of Seymour Hersh talking about the pipeline. If few people can just take us to the brink of war without checking with anybody, where are we? Why do they love war so much? Why? We need to ask that question, and it's not being asked. There are people who feel that war's just great. Really? War gives life more meaning. Really? Whose life?
So I want to talk about this new. Well, I don't actually know if it's new, but it's certainly something that you and Tulsi Gabbard are headlining, which is the Independent National Convention this spring in Austin, Texas. So there's a convention happening April 3rd through 5th, and I think the last time, if I'm not mistaken, before the pandemic, this was in Wyoming. And what you guys are pushing for is something very interesting. It would be sort of the ending of the two-party system in a way, kind of creating unity amongst libertarians, green, independents, all of these sort of the parties and the people that have not been able to, which is really the majority at this point. We're now seeing that the Republican Party itself and the Democratic Party, the actual support for those parties has shrunk well below where independents are in this country at this point. So there's this idea that maybe independents could come together and sort of unify around changing the system to where it's no longer a two-party system. I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit more about this. Like, what do you think we really could dismantle the two-party system the way it is? I mean, there seems to be some forces working against that, namely the Electoral College, actually, when it comes to the presidential election, winner-take-all sort of, races throughout the country. Is this possible?
Well, let me give you a little preview of what I'm going to say at the event in April. First of all, I'm a Democrat. I have taken an independent approach as a Democrat in challenging my party daily for 16 years while in the Congress, and before that, and since then. So, and I think there are Democrats who are independent-minded. One of the problems of the primary system and the current political system is that it intensifies the hold that the two-party system has on our politics. You have to be a member of a party to run in a primary, right? Parties have rigged it state by state to make it very hard for independents to be able to qualify for a ballot. In some cases, you need hundreds of thousands of signatures. And I mean, the system is set up to protect the two parties. Now, what I will advocate and do advocate is independents voting in party primaries to try to get a different person in than the one who's currently holding the power, and to use the vote. You get two votes. You can vote in a primary, you can vote in a general. Okay, somebody said, well, you've declared that you're a Democrat or Republican, you vote in a primary. Well, let me tell you, I may be a Democrat, but I'm an independent Democrat. And I think that it's so important for independents to vote in primaries. Actually, my wife, Elizabeth, and I have been talking about this for years. She calls the approach party animal, that we should all be party animals for the primary. Vote in those primaries to try to affect the outcome. But then if it doesn't go our way, reserve the right to support an independent candidate. I mean, we need to change the equation. And in doing so, we make both of the parties more accountable. And because if they're worried about a wave of so-called independent voters coming into primaries, they got to start looking to a broader constituency. Right now, they don't have to do that. They figure you get the nomination of one party or another, you're home free. Well, maybe not. And so my approach would be a little bit different. Take a party animal approach. Get people to vote in primaries, even though they're independents. And again, I'm a Democrat. I'm an independent Democrat. I reserve the right to vote for whoever I want to in a general election. The party it's up to the party to make the sale of why you should vote for their candidate, this Democrat or Republican candidate. But if they can't make that, if they can't deliver that, who says we're locked in? Are you kidding? Really? And, the Democrats have a real quandary here. The idea that somehow 2022 reflected an impermeability to a shift in 2024. Don't kid yourself, my Democratic brothers and sisters. And I think that if 2024 is going to show us anything, well, President Biden has been able to make a case on domestic policy, and some would argue some aspects of it, but he's made a case. Foreign policy, they are a disaster, and they're in real trouble on that. If anybody wants to take that challenge to them in a primary or in a general election.
Yeah, so this independent national convention, this sort of idea to unify the platform of independents, green, libertarians, undeclared voters, it's very interesting. The idea, from what I understand from the reporting, is that this independent convention supports ranked choice voting, bringing back blockchain-backed voter identification, and so these are very interesting ideas, but they're ideas that are already out there. I don't know if you know the answer to this, because I know you're speaking at this event, you're headlining along with Tulsi Gabbard, but I don't know how involved you are with the Independent National Committee, or the people that are behind all of this. But there are other parties that have come out looking to do something similar, namely the Forward Party that is put out there by Andrew Yang. Is he at all involved in this? Because he's also advocating for ranked choice voting. There's also the Unity ticket.
I can't speak for him, but I will tell you this, that it's important for groups to come together to try to exercise some kind of collective power. But I see that as kind of the second step. The first step being, don't ignore the primary elections. Do not ignore the primary elections. Now, I know some people, I don't want to vote in a party primary. I don't want to declare I'm a Democrat or Republican. Let me tell you something. One can still be very independent-minded and enter into a party primary and reserve the right to vote differently in a general election. This idea that somehow we're all locked in once we do, go one way or another, that's not true. And so that's going to be my message. And I think it's good for people to I think it's great for people to coalesce, but put the pressure on the primary so that the respective candidates aren't given a free pass. Because what happens is primary voters have an outsized influence on the process. And those who stay out of voting in a primary are doing so to their detriment. And, we have to create some new space here. I can be independent and a Democrat. I can be independent and a Republican. We have to expand our identification of who we are politically. There's been an expansion of personal identification over the last 2 decades about who individuals are as people. Well, our political definition is very narrow right now. We need to expand who we are as political entities, as political individuals, and not pigeonhole ourselves and say, well, we can only, we have to stay out of this process because it's tainted. Yeah, right. Of course it is. But without us, it just becomes worse.
I don't understand why you're still a Democrat, Dennis. I'm going to be honest with you. The party has moved away from you more. In some ways, I suppose some of the narratives have moved towards some of the things that you've been championing for a while, such as, you've been a long supporter of free education and universal health care. That is something the Democratic Party at times says they're for, but then in practice, they don't ultimately implement those ideas. Whenever they get the chance, they seem to sabotage them behind the scenes. And then further, you've been demonized by the Democratic Party over and over for the time that you were against the Iraq War, for the time you sat down with Bashar al-Assad. You are continually against the never-ending wars that we're in now, which is not anywhere in the Democratic Party platform at all. Being against the surveillance state when Democrats seem to be for the surveillance state. Besides infrastructure, I guess, besides wanting to make huge investments in infrastructure, which Joe Biden says he wants to do, why are you still a Democrat? Why do you even, they're moving away from you. So why are you still insisting on being a Democrat? Why not just say, that's it, I'm out, I'm an independent, I'm gone?
Check, please.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining the show. I want to tell you about our sponsors that make this show possible. As the U.S. surpasses the $31.4 trillion debt limit in January, the White House administration continues to disregard the need for spending reduction. Despite the lack of fiscal responsibility from our national leaders, it's time for you to take charge of your financial future by investing in gold through Birch Gold. Birch Gold can provide stability during uncertain times. The process of converting a traditional IRA or 401k into a precious metals IRA has been made simple by Birch Gold. So all you got to do to get started is visit birchgold.com/Kim and request a free info kit on gold, followed by a consultation with a precious metals specialist. So they'll walk you through the whole process and really make it easy for you. Just consider that in order to pay off all the national debt, everybody in America would have to contribute $247,000. And, this debt issue is expected to only worsen, making it imperative to secure your finances. Birch Gold, with its A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and positive feedback from thousands of satisfied customers, can be trusted to safeguard your future. So visit birchgold.com/Kim to take the first step in protecting your assets with gold.